The Gina and Matty podcast.
Our next guest, strap yourselves in for this one. Our next guest has represented the Sydney Uni Flames in the WNBL, has won a gold medal with the Australian Women's Rugby Sevens team, has an Order of Australia medal for her service to sport, plays in the AFLW, played for Carlton and is currently playing for the GWS Giants, has a podcast called The Female Athlete Project, and she joins us on the line this morning. Did I forget anything, Chloe? Did I forget anything on your bio there?
I reckon you've ticked off most of it.
What is the one of those things that you're most proud of? What's the thing you're most proud of in your career so far?
I reckon it's probably hard to go past the Olympic gold medal. I reckon that's often a pretty good one to pull out, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, I
just
bet.
wear it to parties.
Yeah, you would, wouldn't you? We would if we had one.
100%. Now, I wanted to have a quick chat to you because I love your podcast and I keep an eye across your socials so I know exactly what's going on in the world of female sport because, even though I think what the stat is something like 40% of participants in sport are females, but only you get 4% of the media coverage. So it's people like you, Chloe, that are making noise and making sure that young girls can, be what they see. What's happened in the last couple of days around the Women's World Cup, the FIFA World Cup here in Australia and New Zealand?
Yeah, it's been an awesome report that's been released, and thank you for following along. I think it's such a big thing, that visibility piece. So what Football Australia have done is they released a report off the back of the FIFA Women's World Cup that's all about the legacy, because they talked a lot about the fact that, yes, it's this huge event that we're having on home soil, but what does that actually mean for the future of the game and for the future of women and girls in sport? And so they released a report that's got some pretty cool statistics in there. And with all of the work I do at the Female Athlete Project, I'm a bit of a nerd for the data because I think, without going, I'll touch on a couple of the key points, but I think the coolest thing about having data from reports like this is really challenging this idea. I think for a lot of people, if you look back 5 or 10 years, we kind of hold on to these assumptions, and people would have made the assumptions that the Matildas could never have hosted a tournament that sold 1.2 million tickets that brought in $1.32 billion of economic impact. The report talks about the fact that there's $324 million in decreased healthcare costs because of the participation that the tournament will inspire. It's just there's some really huge numbers that have come out of this report.
Yeah, I noticed it already. We've started, we did a bit of summer soccer with my kids. I've got a 9-year-old girl. She does summer soccer, and she only started playing soccer because of the Matildas.
I love that.
And I think in the last sort of 6 months, the uptake has been huge. We went down to the park, and it was probably a 50-50 split between boys and girls of that age. Yeah, 100%.
Playing soccer, isn't it? Great.
Yeah, 100%.
That's just the best.
Isn't it just? And now also something that you've been quite vocal about with the Female Athlete Project was the fact that no one could actually buy Mackenzie Arnold's goalkeeper jersey.
Yes.
Throughout the tournament, she had her iconic purple jersey that she wore in goals.
Yeah.
She was the hero of quite a few games during that World Cup, but no one could get their hands on it.
Yeah, the brick wall. She was just an absolute boss in goals, and it's pretty exciting that today it's going to be out. I think it's midday today. People can for the first time buy the Brick Walls jersey.
Oh wow!
So good. So all those boys and girls who wanted to be Mackenzie Arnold can now get her jersey and rock it hard. And I think it's also going to be on sale at the Tilly's game tomorrow. The sold out weeks ago Tilly's game in Melbourne at Marvel Stadium.
Yeah, it's just awesome. There's just so many different categories that they're selling out different things in, and I think it's just really cool, again, to kind of have these numbers and figures that really show that Football Australia put this investment into this huge tournament, and it's paid off. I think these athletes, like the Matildas themselves, are such marketable athletes, are such talented athletes, but they're driving a lot of commercial opportunities, and I think for that to then filter down to, like you said, to your daughter going to play soccer off the back of the World Cup, I just think that's the best full circle moment.
I think too that one of the things for me that happened with particularly the Matildas is every little girl out there, whether they're sporty or not, saw women being so successful and thought, I can do anything I want. It wasn't just about sport for me as well. I feel like they just inspired girls and boys, of course, but girls out there can now go, you know what, if they can do it, I can do anything.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that was the best thing, right? There was this real feeling throughout the World Cup of you didn't have to be able to explain the offside rule. You didn't have to have this like inherent knowledge of like every single player. I felt like as a whole, it really just welcomed people in. And I think for a really long time, lots of girls and women have potentially felt excluded from certain sports if they didn't have all of this like great knowledge and passion about a particular sport. I think that's what they did so well with this World Cup, is that everyone felt like they could just get on board and ride the wave with the Matildas, which was amazing.
We're joined this morning by Chloe Dalton. She has a podcast called The Female Athlete Project, one of the biggest sport podcasts in the country, mind you. Producer Loz is with us as well, Chloe. She's got a question for you.
Yeah, just jumping in quickly because I noticed with my friends in particular, so I'm 30 and we were going to the pub to watch it and it was sold out. Like you could not get a space. You could not get a seat. We're not typically real sporty kind of people, but they were literally on the edge of our seats. We were standing up on chairs. We had our eyes over our, like literally just hands over our eyes the whole time, and everyone was so committed. And were you seeing a lot of that reflected, I guess, across your podcast, but across the socials, just seeing people really jumping on board and showing that support in a new way?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was the coolest thing. Like we saw a huge amount of engagement on our growth in our social channels through that time, because I think what we started to work out is like, yes, like people love seeing like the scores and the results, but I think there's this really big thing where like people just loved that feeling of like being really united in just so desperately wanting the Tillies to do well. And I think it was also this really cool thing of people on our socials in particular really celebrating women existing in spaces that they might not have had the chance to do that before. So I think it was so cool that like so much of our country got on board. I think the stats in the report said that 70% of our country watched that semi-final match.
Wow. 70.
Yeah, huge. What sporting organisation needs to take the biggest leaf out of Football Australia's book with the investment and money in they put into female football? Who's dragging the chain a little bit?
Oh gosh, you're really calling me out here.
Sorry, we're not live or anything. We can edit it out. No, if you don't feel comfortable answering that, you don't have to. But
no, I do think I will say, just in terms of looking ahead. So in 2029, Rugby Australia will be hosting the Women's Rugby World Cup. So that'll be on home soil, which is a huge event. And the Wallaroos are our national 15-a-side team. If you haven't watched them before, they are also incredible athletes. So I think I'd really love to see Rugby Australia follow in the footsteps of Football Australia, and they've already kind of off the back of the FIFA Women's World Cup, the Wallaroos players actually put out a public letter calling out the fact that they weren't being invested in, they weren't being treated well, and Rugby Australia have taken some really significant steps. They've brought a full-time coach on board. Players are now, the top-tier players can earn $70,000 plus. Like they're making the right steps, and I'd really love them to follow Football Australia so that hopefully we can have a similar moment with the Wallaroos in 2029.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for your time this morning, Chloe. Something I did forget when I was doing your bio is author. You do I did leave that one off. The Girls Don't Play Sport, which is Chloe's book, The Game-Changing Defiant Rise of Women's Sport and Why It Matters, and also The A to Z of Who I Could Be. One more for the little kids. 26 athletes that every little kid and big adult should know. Chloe, thank you for your time this morning. We appreciate it, and make sure you get around the podcast, The Female Athlete Project. Have a great morning, mate.
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolute pleasure.
Bye.
The Gina and Matty Podcast.
For more great comedy shows like this, head to novapodcast.com.au.